The traitorous Astartes perform all manner of heresies to sate their disgusting desires. Outcasts of the Emperor's light, content with debasing themselves for the delight of malevolent gods. Among all who give worship to the ruinous powers, the followers of the youngest exceed all others in their depraved hedonism. For today, we shall elucidate the warbands of chaos devoted to the Prince of Pleasure, the thralls of She Who Thirsts, the warbands of Slaanesh.
Your whimpering pleas are pathetic. My ears have known songs that have made the air weep, sweet blood. Such was the bliss. Clearly, you need greater encouragement to improve your voice.
Each founding of the Adeptus Astartes legions exemplify a singular virtue demonstrated by their primarchs. Some legions are renowned for their applications of strategy, others their use of technology, or even their mastery of the warp. All striving to reach the optimal potential demonstrated by their many heroes and veterans. Yet one legion would strive for a goal unattainable within the bounds of the mortal universe: perfection. And their fall would be one of the most storied within the Imperium. The Third Legion of the Adeptus Astartes, the Emperor's Children. Recruiting its initial soldiers from the courts of Europa during the later stages of the Unification Wars of Terra, the Third Legion would consist of the royal sons of the nobles whom had defied the Emperor and suffered the wrath of his Thunder Warriors. Drawn from each of the noble houses, the fathers and mothers of the tributes would invariably ascribe to two mentalities: that their sons were hostages now used in the blood-drenched wars of the Emperor, or the brightest and most zealous of his new warriors to uphold his newly founded Imperium. With some noble houses, such as Loculus of Comarg, willingly sending every son of its bloodline to join the Third Legion, and subsequently sending its firstborn of each new generation thereafter. Over time, drawing more aristocratic bloodlines into the fold, the Third Legion would lay its foundation with the pride of its bloodlines and ancestries of war. Serving as a beacon for the Imperial Army efforts during the Unification Wars, the Third Legion would command and support the Army's battles as regal and noble bearers of the Imperium's might. A symbol of the Astartes' providence, unlike most legions, the Third Legion would be deployed in smaller battalions. The aristocratic Astartes would have a keen eye for the strengths and weaknesses inherent in the Imperial Army's structures and deployments. Leading successful and glorious campaigns in the name of the Emperor, the Third Legion would bask in its adoration of the common soldiery and citizens of humanity as the brilliant, handsome, and indomitable will of the Emperor. Their favor to the Emperor cemented in the form of the Palatine Aquila. A symbol of their peerless devotion to his will, the Third Legion would bear his sigil with boundless pride, earned at the cost of the Third Legion's 16th cohort's annihilation whilst fighting alongside the Emperor and his custodies during the Proxima betrayal of the Great Crusade, saving his life by sacrificing their own and never giving ground to the treachery of the insurrectionists. Given the duty of enacting exterminatus on the planet of Proxima, the Third Legion would claim their due vengeance and be renamed, though not ratified officially, as the Emperor's Children. Assigned as envoys, equerries, and honor guards, the Emperor's Children would relish their favor as they carried out diplomatic missions in his name. Though with time, the Third Legion's misfortunes would grow, and these would not be the last to befall the Emperor's favored sons. Within a solar year of their triumph at Proxima, the Legion's gene seed reserve would be destroyed during its transportation to the moon of Luna. Hampering their development of new recruits, a viral outbreak would also ruin the Third Legion's stores of gene seed within the gene labs of Terra. The Third Legion would slowly wither, as casualties of war would further diminish their now nigh unreplenishable numbers. Their strength dwindling, the Legion would appear to be doomed to extinction. Yet narrowly, the Legion would escape its fate with the discovery of their long-lost Primarch, Fulgrim. Dubbed the Phoenician or Phoenix by his gene sons, Fulgrim would be raised on the bleak mining world of Chemos. Shrouded in perpetual twilight, the dull world's populace would struggle with the planet's diminishing resources and be required to tirelessly work to produce food to survive. Despite strict food rationing, the planet would be buffeted by warp storms, making trade with passing vessels difficult. Culling orphans to prevent the overconsumption of rations, the planet's police force, the caretakers, would nonetheless beseech the planet's rulers, known as the executives, to spare the life of the newly discovered child, Fulgrim. Raised by one of the caretakers, Fulgrim would be named after the deity of Chemos, and the young Primarch would become a laborer, utilizing the planet's myriad mining technologies. Rising to the rank of executive at the age of 15, Fulgrim would govern the fortress factory of Kallax, and with time, repair and reorganize the mining technologies of the planet to improve their productivity. Creating surpluses of materials, trade would blossom, and Fulgrim would ascend to govern the planet. Allowing for free time to pursue culture and the arts, Chemos would flourish, and with the reunion of the Emperor and Fulgrim, the Emperor's children would soon be salvaged. Addressing the last surviving 200 Astartes of his legion, Fulgrim would remark, "You are the Emperor's chosen, his heralds, his warriors, his children. For this is only the beginning." On hearing these words, the Emperor would officially ratify the 3rd Legion as the Emperor's children. Repainting their armor in the lacquer of Imperial purple and bearing the Empress Palatine Aquila, the Emperor's own chosen Astartes would swell with pride and consider themselves above their cousin legions. With Fulgrim now driven to uphold the standards and iconography of his legion, they would epitomize perfection as their defining characteristic. Paragons of imperial culture, civility, and nobility, Fulgrim would demand only the finest craftsmanship for his legion's armor. Garbing themselves in increasingly intricate finery, the Primarch and his legionaries would embroider their cloaks and gild their armor. With so few Astartes in number, the Emperor would assign the Emperor's children to serve alongside his favored son, Horus Lupercal, and the 16th Legion, the Lunar Wolves. For a solar decade, the Lunar Wolves would mentor the 3rd Legion. Forging bonds of immense strength, the Primarchs and their sons would grow to complement their strengths until the Legion's numbers had grown to a size able to stand alone. Its recruits comprising of Terran and Chemos-born Astartes, the Emperor's children would establish their fortress monastery on Chemos within the old mining factory where Fulgrim had worked, Kallax. Given command of the 28th Expeditionary Fleet, the Emperor's children would now forge their path anew, yet further hasten their fall. Filled with an intense need to prove themselves in the eyes of the Emperor, the 3rd Legion would bring several worlds into compliance during the Great Crusade. Fighting alongside the 10th Legion, the Iron Hands, the 2 Primarchs and their gene-sons would form a great bond of respect. Though seen by many legions as pompous and gaudy, the Iron Tenth would recognize the Emperor's children's dedication to serve the Imperium and strive for greatness. Yet during the purging of the Xenos on the world of Laren, Primarch Fulgrim would be ensnared by the lure of chaos. The Lair Xenos under the thrall of the demonic being known as Slaanesh, the genetically enhanced beings would pique the interest of the Legion's chief apothecary, Fabius Bile, and with the discovery of the corrupting demon blade, the Lair Blade, Fulgrim's descent into madness would begin. Claiming the blade as his own, the greater demon inside would whisper forbidden and twisted thoughts into the mind of the Phoenician. Offering Fulgrim the perfection he so desperately sought, Fulgrim would seal his legion's fate with the intervention of the now corrupted War Master, Horus Lupercal. Allying with the traitorous Astartes of the World Eaters, Death Guard, and Sons of Horus, the Emperor's children would cull the loyalists within their ranks. Succumbing to the gifts of the ruinous powers, the Emperor's children would in their vain attempt to achieve perfection, mutilate their bodies to achieve their goal. Fulgrim further damning the Legion, his demon-gifted influence would oversee the orgy of bloodletting, pleasure and mutilations wrought by the composer, Bekwa Kinska, aboard the Emperor's Children flagship, Pride of the Emperor. Corrupted by chaos, Kinska would orchestrate an orchestral piece of such debauchery that it would drive the already tainted legionaries to new heights of excess. Birthing the Emperor-damned Noise Marines and further degenerating the legionaries' chaos-born mutations, all hope of the Legion's redemption would cease. Believing the Imperium to stand in the way of humanity's ascension, the now horrifically transformed Legion would attack their loyalist brethren on the world of Istvan V and murder the Primarch of the Iron Hands, Ferrus Manus. Despite Fulgrim's regret in slaying his once brother, his body would be possessed by the demon of the Lair Blade. Though Fulgrim would eventually be freed from his prison of flesh, and in time ascend to the favour of the Ruinous Powers to become a Demon Prince, the Third Legion would follow their Primarch with revel. With the traitors' victory at Istvan V and their many atrocities culminating at the Siege of Terra, the Emperor's children would not attack the defences of the Imperial Palace. With no trace of decency or honour left within their wretched hides, the Third Legion would attack the civilian populace of Terra. Pursuing their depraved hedonism upon the innocents, the Emperor's children would capture billions of humans to use in their grotesque experiments and torturous heresies. Yet with the defeat of the War Master by the Emperor of Mankind and the traitor forces driven from Terra, the Emperor's children lay waste to many loyal outposts and worlds in the wake of their journey to the Eye of Terror. Lacking all concepts of brotherhood, the Emperor's children would raid other traitor legions for fresh slaves to enact their depraved pleasures. Fragmented by their enraged former allies during the slave wars, the Emperor's children would regroup on the world of Harmony, yet be outright decimated by Abaddon the Despoiler and his newly formed Black Legion. Sundered into small warbands, the Emperor's children now roam the galaxy, seemingly without the guidance of their Primarch. Their homeworld of Chemos declared exterminatus and destroyed by the Imperium, rumours persist that the long disorganized Third Legion shall soon return with their Primarch Fulgrim at their vanguard. Though for the sake of humanity, such rumours are best left as such, for there are truly fewer foes worse to be felled by than the wretched servants of Slaanesh. The Geneseed of the Third Legion would craft warriors of incredibly noble bearing, beautiful features, and goal-driven nature. Consistently reproducing the Legion's characteristic albinism and violet eyes within their ranks, the Legion would nonetheless maintain a desirable aesthetic envied by the citizenry of the Imperium and jealousy of many cousin legions. Yet the Legion's founding would be blighted by a viral contagion, threatening to destroy all traces of the Third Legion's Geneseed. With the Legion's apothecaries exemplifying an intense attention to detail and laborious effort, their labours would ensure the survival of the Legion, laying the foundations for the Emperor's children's obsession with the pursuit of perfection. Their Geneseed so painstakingly maintained, the Third Legion would possess likely the most pure and stable Geneseed of all 20 founding legions. With a mutations rate practically at zero, the Emperor's children would implant only the finest of aspirants. As a result, allowing almost zero psychers within their ranks, due to the nature of psychomutations being screened from their selections. Their Geneseed adaptations operating at peak functions, the Third Legion would outperform all legions with regards to their adaptations to their procedures, a trait which unfortunately would be wasted in its entirety, with the legions corrupting by the Ruinous Powers. Their numbers difficult to replenish due to the necessity of repurposing the stolen Geneseed of loyalist Astartes. During their service as a loyal legion of the Astartes, the Emperor's children would be the only legion to adopt the Emperor's Aquila across their chestplate, the sign of favour from the Master of Mankind, further bolstering the legion's ego and illusion as the greatest of all Astartes, further embellishing their armour with filigree, battle honours, oaths of moment, and rank signifiers. The Emperor's children would be regarded as peacocks by their fellow legions. With their fall to chaos, the Third Legion would cover their gold and imperial purple with more garish colours to honour the fell power known as Slaanesh. Patterns of pastel pink and black, piercings and tattered shards of gold jutting from their flesh. The Emperor's children now bear no marks of disciplined organisation. With no two Astartes decorated the same, the Emperor's children now seek to stand apart from one another in their efforts to express their own individual decadence, often exhibiting facial scars and bindings which twist their faces into malformed smiles. The golden talon and eagle-winged badge of the Third Legion now covered in the heretical markings of the Prince of Pleasure. Before their downfall, The Emperor's children would be structured by their Primarch Fulgrim's own stringent requirements. Disciplined, formal, and conforming to strict protocol, assignment of equipment and promotions within the Legion would undergo intense consideration and scrutiny. Understanding their exact value in the eyes of their Primarch and the Legion's command staff, each Astartes would remain committed to his Legion's goals and values in order to gain favor and rise through the ranks. Each squad of the Legion, organized to specialize with a purpose in mind, unit cohesion would be paramount. Utilizing all squad variations present within every Astartes Legion, the Emperor's children would be prepared for any variation of warfare. The Legion would, like all, however, use personal favorite strategies, and alike to the White Scars, regard speed and maneuverability as preferable to endurance or firepower. Deploying a preponderance of jump packs and land speeders to meet such demands, the 3rd Legion would recapture the tales of knights riding into battle with armor gleaming and banners held aloft. Comprised of over 110,000 Astartes prior to the Horus Heresy, the Legion would be divided into approximately 30 chapters called Millennials. Primarch Fulgrim would command the Legion overall, but assign 10 Lord Commanders to lead the first 10 Millennials. Equipped by Primarch Sanguinius of the Blood Angels as Fulgrim's Princes of War, the Lord Commanders would foster command alike to a cult of personality within the Legion, passing down their orders to lower-ranked officers in the order of Commanders, Lieutenant Commanders, Masters, Sub-Commanders, Tribunes Palatine, Captains, Ancients, and eventually, Sergeants. With records of subdivisions lost to history, there do still exist accounts of some elite forces within the ranks of the Legion. The Sun Killers, equipped with las cannons, would perform heavy ordnance duties. The wings of the Phoenician, commanded by their Eagle King commander, would land into battle via jump packs and assist in close quarters combat. The Phoenix Guard would act as the 200-strong ceremonial honor guard of their Primarch. The Brotherhoods of the Palatine Blades would form the greatest swordsmen of the Legion, in loose formations to combat the greatest foes of the Imperium in single combat. The finest of the 3rd Legion's Imperial Army soldiers would be named the Righteous Blades and would win glory for the Imperium during the Great Crusade. Yet with the fall of their patron Legion, the Righteous Blades would be renamed the Roaring Blades, with their damned service to the ruinous powers. And finally, with the transformation of a select number of the Legion's Astartes into the so-called Noise Marines, a division would be created to unleash their potential in all its ear-splitting force, the Cacophony. Severely depleted in number during the Istvan Free atrocity, the Emperor's children would diminish from over 110,000 Astartes to an estimate of 50,000. Further depleting their battle-capable vehicles during the Istvan V Dropsite massacre, the Legion would devote more of its resources into transforming their bodies under the knife of their chief apothecary, Fabius Bile. With no restraint or censure, Bile would construct horrors of flesh and ceramite to fulfill the needs of both his Primarch and his own demented curiosity. Gleaning corrupting knowledge from the influence of the Legion's warrior lodge, the Brotherhood of the Phoenix, the Emperor's children's descent into madness and depravity would be swift. With all previous formations and structures torn asunder, the Emperor's children have now fragmented into small warbands of varying sizes. Each led by their own commander, the warbands answer to no higher authority. Even their allegiance to serve the whims of Fulgrim is unfounded, with no actions perpetrated as an organized legion taking place since the scouring of the heretics. Driven by their base instincts, the Emperor's children serve their patron god Slaanesh with pathological fervor, pursuing new sensations and fixations alongside their battle brothers, not out of loyalty, but a simple feral need to rely on one another to engage in battle and the enslavement of their chargers. The 3rd Legion's pursuit of perfection would garner them a reputation as incredibly skilled warriors prior to their corruption during the Horus Heresy. Training during every opportunity at their assigned duty, the Astartes of the Emperor's children would resolve to never be satisfied with their ever-increasing skill at arms. Often dueling amongst the ranks of the Astartes, they would learn from the range of martial techniques championed by each Astartes Legion. Recovering the strange and artisanal weapons of their enemies, the Emperor's children would relinquish their own mastercrafted weapons for those of greater quality. Mastering their spoils of war and wielding them in battle, the Legion would be equipped with many strange Xenos axes, glaives, swords, and more, further nurturing each individual Astartes' self-reliance in battle and combined force of arms. Analyzing every battle, deployment, strategy, unforeseen trial, and battle loss, the Emperor's children would apply their experience to endure any and all conditions of war. Demanding the same degree of conviction from their brother legions and the Imperial Army, the Third Legion would lead their forces by example and expect zero hesitation or flaws from their allies. Thriving in their use of rigorously practiced battle tactics, they would relish any chance to dominate the battlefield with negligible flaws or losses. Idolizing the Emperor with near fanatical devotion, they would seek to emulate his peerless strength and glory. Following a strict hierarchy of example, from the Primarchs to the lowliest of humans, the seeds for the Legion's elitism would grow with their continual improvement and self-aggrandizement. Envisioning the Emperor's total rule of the galaxy, the Sons of Fulgrim would revere culture, music, and art. Believing that once their days of fighting were over, they would pursue perfection in the appreciation and participation of such diversity of art forms as spoils of a galaxy at peace. A facet of their downfall, a direct result of their passion for the senses, combined with their burgeoning arrogance. It is no wonder as to how the Legion would be consumed by carnal pleasure and ever-degenerating stimuli. Now roaming within the roiling tides of the warp, the Emperor's children partake in never-ending pleasure and excess. The Third Legion revel in their twisted purgatory of indulgence, their boundless appetites impossible to sate, no matter how many millennia they live, nor countless mortals they delight in causing inconceivable tortures. Perpetrating unspeakable amounts and degrees of cruelty, their suffering-laced ecstasy shall not end so long as the ruinous powers hold dominion of the Immaterium. Their cackling laughter at each and every atrocity, only emboldening their patron god and its foul desires.
There is a tragedy in perfection, as the ancient philosophers were wont to say. It is doomed to fail, to become imperfect. The more tightly it is grasped, the more imperfect it becomes. The fall of all those who turned against us are all bitter tragedies in their own right. But the fall of the Emperor's children is a tragedy in the greatest and oldest sense. Their tragedy is not that they fell from perfection, but that it was never in their power to attain it. For they were always flawed, broken things. They reached for a distant light that would forever be out of their grasp. And in the reaching they fell, so far that the flawed magnificence they had so painfully achieved would rot in our memories. The flaws were there, my lords. They were always there. We were blind to them. Now, we must see both the glory that was and the ruin it became. We have that duty.
The Angels of Ecstasy are a Slaaneshi warband of Chaos Space Marines. Once known as the Sons of Ulfinus prior to their descent into madness, these once loyal sons of the Imperium were enticed by the fell entity known as She Who Firsts. Cementing their defection during the Ganymedean betrayal, their depraved actions made in the name of the Lord of Pleasures are too unspeakable to tell. Infamous during the fire season of Sarnax during 966.M41, their search for an Eldari webway portal upon the jungle world would test their mettle against a band of raiders. Bled further by reinforcements of the Howling Banshees, the arrogance of the Xenos proved to be their downfall, their abandonment of long-range tactics for melee combat proving costly. The amplification channels of the Banshees' helmets, typically used to overwhelm their enemies with ear-splitting screams, imbibing the Angels of Ecstasy with never before experienced sensation. The reflexes of these Chaos Space Marines were strengthened. Delighting in the slaughter of the Xenos as their passions rose to a fever pitch, the Noise Marines of the Angels of Ecstasy pushed back the Eldar as their Chaos Lord, Ulix the Enthralled, claimed the portal and sacrificed a captured ranger to Slaanesh. Clad in pink ceramite, trimmed with black paint, These gaudy warriors are an insult to the eyes as much as they are to the Imperium's purity. The symbol of their warband, a black, stylized mark of Slaanesh upon a field of pink, bears similarity to an anchor or some peculiar weapon. Venturing into the void upon their flagship, Praise Eternal, this once proud weapon of the Imperium, alike to its corrupted crew, now turns its guns on the innocents for the sick delight of she who firsts. The Corpus Brethren are a Slaaneshi warband of Chaos Space Marines. Once a loyalist chapter of Astartes of unknown providence, known simply as the Sentinels, during the Abyssal Crusade of 321.M37, their downfall was cemented. Called to combat the emergent threat of the warp storm dubbed Dionys, following the ecclesiarchal purges, its consumption of a dozen star systems of the Imperium's domains required a robust response. As mutations and cultist uprisings quadrupled, even Space Marine aspirants of several chapters observed pronounced manifestations of their gene seed mutations, one such chapter being the Sentinels. Ordered by Saint Basilius the Elder to hurl themselves into the heart of the storm in order to combat the peril which now claimed their homeworlds, the Sentinels and every other affected Space Marine chapter dared not refuse such a command, supported by the High Lords of Terra. Dubbed the Judged by the Ecclesiarchy, only a penitent crusade could purify their souls. The chapter's debates, made during the Council of Dismay, confirming their preference of martyrdom rather than dishonor. Each strike cruiser and battle barge of the amassed, approximating 30,000 Space Marines, passed through the Cadian Gate. The mighty assemblage of such a fleet beset immediately by a Chaos Warfleet upon their traversal through the Eye of Terror. Scattered alike to every one of the 29 chapters who had ventured beside them, the Sentinels ventured to the demon world of Oliensis, observing that peculiarly its form bore similarity to a morbidly obese man, hunched into a fetal position. Hunting the goat-headed heretics upon the planet's surface, the din of combat lured noise marines from the planet's fleshy pores, bearing credence to the peculiar analysis that the celestial body was indeed a living entity in and of itself. Swallowing the combatants within its enormous gullet, Oliensis, now consuming the Sentinels, changed their character during their time confined within its digestive tract. Regurgitated into new, unrecognizable forms, the stomach acid of the creature had dissolved the paint of their former heraldry, the deranged heretics now freed from its gut, giving praise to Slaanesh for their salvation. Clad in dirty white ceramite, trimmed with brass, these bleached sons of She Who Firsts rarely keep their armor clean for long. The symbol of their warband, a red-horned demon's head upon a field of white, its many eyes look for prey to sate the hunger of these cannibal Astartes. Gorging on the flesh of mutants, innocents, Astartes, and myriad other morsels, the Corpus Brethren delight in the taste of flesh, despite its failure to nourish their forms.
We are the purest of all. We can do no wrong.
The Flawless Host are a Slaaneshi warband of Chaos Space Marines. Once known as the Shining Blades chapter, their renown at the height of their glory, fighting alongside the Red Scorpions, Umbral Titans, and Ultramarines, seemed to destine them as paragons of the Astartes Creed. Noted for their record of pure gene seed with no signs of corruption nor mutation, the Shining Blades, regardless of their service, fell victim to the sin of pride as they began to persecute the innocent. So sure of their abilities won from rigid training and countless victories in battle, conflicts such as the Barilla massacres of 498.M32 deluded the Shining Blades to believe themselves above the reproach of any Imperial authority as their slaughter of civilians drew the ire of their contemporaries. Perpetuating their traitorous crusades against their former comrades in arms, the warband now known as the Flawless Host would be brought to justice by their former allies, the Red Scorpions. Led by their then Lord High Commander, Faye Krawn, the Red Scorpions demanded vengeance for the attack on their strike cruiser, the Crux Puritas, and theft of fallen Battle Brothers gene seed. Scouring the Flawless Host staging areas and outposts with purging flame, Lord High Commander Crown commit the entirety of his chapter to destroy the warband's asteroid base of operations. After 6 days of combat, Fey Crown confronted the Flawless Host captain, who had stolen the Crux Puritas, beheading him within the Voidcraft's bridge using his revered chapter relic, the Power Sword Blade of the Scorpion. Fleeing from the battle, vowing to enact vengeance against their nemesis, the Flawless Host ventured into the unknown to tend to their wounds and pledged their service to She Who Firsts as a fitting patron for their physical perfection. Clad in pale pink ceramite, coupled with purple on their right arms, backpacks, lower legs, and right pauldron, each Astartes also adopts flame patterns which spread across their plate. The symbol of their warband, a black sigil of Slaanesh on a field of pink. Their iconography differs slightly, with the use of a lower crescent rather than an orb shape and an 8-pointed star at its tip. Continuing their depraved acts of violence by the side of the Night Lords during the assault of Euphenia, the warband currently fights within the Liberation of Novaris campaign of the 42nd millennium. Combating the Primara Space Marines of the Silver Templars, the Flawless Host leader, Lyrius Soulslaver, fell at the hands of the Silver Templar First Company captain, Dukas, the former fiefdom of the warband, claimed as the new chapter world of the Templars. It is a safe assumption to believe that the Flawless Host shall not allow such damage to their pride to remain unpunished. The Hedonistari are a Slaaneshi warband of Chaos Space Marines. The origins of these fleet-based pirates are known despite the best efforts of Imperial scholars. Their raids typically harry the eastern fringe of the Ultima Segmentum. Clad in purple ceramite, trimmed with black and bronze, fetishes such as spikes and horns typically adopt their armor. The symbol of their warband, a white sigil of Slaanesh centered on a field of purple, clearly displays their blasphemy with no desire to dilute their praise to the god of pleasure. Allied with the Chaos Lord, Drafoni, in possession of Helldrake Eries, famed throughout the ranks of all warpsmiths, the act of causing disorder and misery is reward enough for these heretics' acts of slaughter. This has been a tale of the great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. The depravity of the Slaaneshi warbands is enough to disgust even their rival Chaos Space Marines. Sacrificing their honor, nobility, and valor for the sake of fleeting pleasures, such are the atrocities committed by these heretics, that even the most brutal tyrannies of the Imperium pale in comparison. Hedonism is an obvious vice, for it offers delights beyond the pale, with the promise of little to no repercussions. Yet be wary, for no prize comes without cost. Should you dabble in the delights of the senses, be wary of their allure, for qualities such as discipline and responsibility shall fall by the wayside. For there are stories aplenty which emphasize the cost of indulgence, and those content only to consume gratification shall never sate their ever-growing hunger.